Maybe we could. Sorry, Chair.
Okay. Waiting for the recording, which will pop on. Usually it's halfway through me saying something and then
Yeah, we'll just, I think they're getting it going right now, Chair. Thank you very much.
Recording in progress.
Okay, we have our recording. So I'd like to call this continuation meeting of the Finance Committee from November 6th to order for November the 12th. I'll start with a land acknowledgement to acknowledge that we are gathered today on the traditional, ancestral, and unceded territory of the Tla'amin Nation, as well as all Coast Salish First Nations on whose traditional territories we have the honor to live, including my home on Wai'ete, also known as Lasqueti Island. I would also like to acknowledge all those who have risked and given their lives to defend our democracy and freedom, and we remember them with gratitude. Since this meeting is a continuation of the November 6th, 2024 Finance Committee meeting, we can now just jump right into section item 8.5 on the financial assistance. And before we get going, I'd like to recap where we're at. So there were 9 grant requests to consider. First, I would like to thank staff, in particular Ms. Lillies, for the work put in to prepare us, to provide us with a comprehensive report and balanced objective recommendations. As we proceed and make changes, Ms. Lillies will almost certainly be able to provide us updated balances of the different grant funding sources. At the November 6th meeting, we had a fair amount of discussion, and I'll summarize a few of the points that I heard so we can kind of refresh ourselves. Several directors expressed support to provide the Powell River Skating Club with their full request of $850 instead of the $355 as in the agenda. Director Lennox expressed support to fund the Association of Savory Island Community with the full amount of the request, while I supported funding the 2 applications from Lasqueti as in the recommendations. The recommendations as a whole will deplete, if adopted as they are right now, will deplete the grant funding sources from the general grants in aid and from areas B, D, and E. So we need to be aware of the interdependencies as we shift things around. We had moved and tabled the recommendation for the Orca bus, so there was a motion put forward and seconded to take the recommendation, then we tabled that. And so that will have to be taken off the table before that item can be resolved. We can start by doing that, or we can deal with some of the other items first. That'll be up to the committee. We declined the application by the Wild Ocean Whale Society, which increases the amounts available in the Area A to D grants by a net of $3,341 from what's in our agenda, with various amounts from areas A to D. And so with that, I will open it up and for motions to see what the committee would like to do. So we can either take off the table the Orca bus, or if you prefer, someone can move one of the other items and go from there. Let's see, I can't see.
Oh, Director.
Yeah. Yeah, no, anyways, I couldn't see Director McCormick for a second. So Director Gisborne, go ahead.
Yeah, just to start us off, because the silence was deafening. Looking at our list, I'm wondering it might be a good idea to just get rid of the easy ones. And by getting rid of, I mean deal with them. For example, the Association of Savory Island Committee that only comes from Area A. Even if we allocate all the grant funding, there's still going to be money left over from Area A. And my thoughts are, I would be happy to deal with the Savory Island, Texada Health Service Society, and then the 2 Lasqueti Island ones before we start getting into the other ones that have to do with, general grant and aid or all the electoral areas and so on and so forth. So that's where I'm at. If you want me to put forward a motion, I would be happy to.
Go ahead.
I would move. Oh, hold on. I got to make sure I got the right one in front of me. Item number. Hold on.
So
Savory Island, number 6. There we go. The board recommend the committee. Oh, that's weird. My agenda is weird.
There was some typos in the original.
Sorry, there's option 1 and option 2. So seeing as how this is area A, I'm actually going to let Director Lennox make his choice whether it wants to be 625 or
So
2,500.
thank you.
Okay, go ahead, Director Lennox. Make a
So
motion
to
for
keep it
whatever.
simple, I'm just going to make a motion to support what is in option 2, the full amount of A6 request using Area A funds.
Second.
Okay, seconded by Director Gisborne. Is there any discussion on that item? And that full amount is
2,500.
2,500, right? Okay, so thank you very much. Is there any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, I will then call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, carried. So A6 done. Okay, if we carry on with this process, then we have the next one up would be the either the Texada Health Services or the Lasqueti Island Food Bank. So Director McCormick?
Thank you, Chair. I would like to move the health services, the Texada Island Health Services, with an amendment, and that is that the $472 that we have left from the Wild Ocean Whale Society, I would like to put into this grant. So I'd like to move a total of $2,286 for the Texada Island Health Services Society to be paid for by Area D Grant and Aid.
Okay, thank you. And is there a seconder for that, Director Lennox? And so just to confirm with Ms. Lillies, is that the correct amount?
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yes, thank you through the chair. I was just wondering, was that $472?
Yeah, it was plus 472.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, that works. I can do that. So then, would you like me to give you an updated amount then?
No, I think if we can, I think I think we're good. When we get to the other ones, we may call
Okay,
on you
perfect.
to be sure. But I think that's just the amount from that was allocated for the Wild Ocean Whale one going to.
Yeah.
Okay, so is there any discussion on that item? I don't see Director McCormick on the screen. Oh, Director McCormick, go ahead. And then Director Brander.
That's good.
Oh, Director Brander.
Thanks, Chair. So I just want to, I guess, get clarification here. So if the money is taken from the grant that we declined and put towards the health center, if we were going to take the money that was previously being given or earmarked, I should say, for the Wild Ocean Whale Society to one of the other applicants, that's no longer possible, I guess, in equitable numbers because the Area D grant and aid will be reduced down to 0 again, essentially. Is that correct?
So that'd be my understanding. If we're talking about the Powell River Skating Club, that in the package is coming from areas A to C right now, so that wouldn't affect that one, but it would affect the ability to increase cassette film or the Fort Tides Hospice.
Okay, thank you. Just wanted clarification.
Okay, is there any further discussion on this? Okay, seeing none, I will then call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That one carries. Okay, moving on. Lasqueti Food Bank. Maybe I'll make that motion. I'll move to allocate. I'll move the recommendation in the agenda for the food bank from the LCA.
Second.
Okay, so any discussion on that? And I'll decide that's their normal amount. They already contacted me. They're doing a very good job. Okay, so then seeing no further discussion, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, none opposed, carried. And I'll move the recommendation for the LIAS, Lasqueti Island Internet Access Society as an agenda. Thank you, Director Gisborne. And I'll just mention that the LIAS used to apply for grants from us regularly for about 1,000, and they haven't for some years. So this kind of their full request, was 5,000. They hadn't asked for a few years. It would have been fine, but I think they'll be hopefully satisfied with getting something to help towards their project that they put forward. Okay, so any further discussion, Director Gisborne?
Yeah, taking a look at our grants to organization chart on page 10 of 152, there is a recommended allocation of $165 from Area E to the Fort Tides Hospice Society. And since I don't think they do much work on Lasqueti Island, I guess my question for Director Farrell or Chair Fall would be, would Area E rather put that $165 towards the Internet Access Society instead? As in, up the
Well,
number.
in response, I mean, I'm not that worried about that amount of money. I do think that the hospice does a very good job. What it does limit, related to comments from Director Brander a moment ago, is if there is a desire by the committee to increase the amount to 4 tides, then if we pass this, then Lasqueti won't be able to go above 165. But I'm happy leaving 165 there. They do a good job, and maybe someone from Lasqueti will benefit from them. And I know we do have our own process on Lasqueti. There isn't a hospice per se, of course, but this is kind of emergent things. So yes, thank you for the thought, but I'm okay with it.
I'm happy.
We're trying to keep it simple. Okay, so any further discussion on this? Seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? And none opposed. That one carries. Okay, so those are those 4. So now we've got the hospice, the cassette film, Orca bus, and skating. Which would you like to deal with next? Director Elliott. Director Elliott.
Director Elliott.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, maybe I didn't hear it. I did call it out. Director Elliott, the floor is yours.
Oh, thank you, Chair. So I think it might be nice to provide the skating club for the full amount of their grant. And I know we were trying to figure out where that extra amount might come from. And now that we've dealt with the area specifics, there was an argument for it to come from general grant and aid, which I think impacts some other things. And so could we have some updated numbers so that we might make a motion for the skating club?
Ms. Lilly, so could we get updated numbers on the amounts in areas A to D? Sorry, A to C. And I believe that, because of the change or the declining the wild ocean whale, that leaves sufficient funds in those 3 pots to increase by 495, but general grants and aid is still limited at the amount 11,530 total. Ms. Lilly?
Yes, thank you, through the chair. With the removal of the wild ocean whale grant, we now have in area A, we want to move to the skating club. If we put 850 there, we would be using 457 or $467.57 from area A, which is possible. From B, $161.55, and from area C, $220.87.
So I would like to move that we do that for the Powell River Skating Club, and if I get a seconder, I'll speak to it.
Second.
So seconder, Director Lennox.
So I kind of like where the grant and aid is currently allocated and would like to support that as well. The city of Powell River does give grant in kind to the skating club every year for ice time. That adds up to significantly more than what they've asked for here. So I do think it is fair to do it this way. And so I'd ask the support of the directors to approve this motion.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this item? Director Lennox?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I've been trying to think about this one too, and although it sort of requires Area A to bear a bit more of a burden, all 3 areas, I think this event is important for that club to get off the ground. They did a good job of explaining where they are with the club and how important this event is. So I'm prepared to support this motion.
Thank you. Any other discussion, Director Gisborne?
Yeah, let me just find the right page here. On their application, I'm getting there. It's a long one. They have the ice fees and the change room fees, which are paid to the city of Powell River. And they informed us that half of those fees are waived as a grant in kind. I can get to that page, but going right from my memory, I believe it worked out to that it saves them roughly $150. So I get what Director Elliott is saying about the city, waiving those fees and hearing that they add up to a significant amount, but from the paperwork in front of me and from what they told us, it's not even close to $800. That's one of the reasons why I think it's appropriate that it goes through general grant and aid, because without that information of like how much is being waived, I'm not entirely sure.
So I'll speak, and then I see Director Elliott. So, while I can see there can be arguments for both sides on where it should come from, and I think you could look at the numbers like that. I also think there's a practical effect here that if we that really the amount of money we're talking about overall isn't very much. I know Lasqueti Area E is not funding any of it, so or on the hook for any of it. So I'll keep my comments brief. But really, it's really, do we want to impact the Orca bus is really from a practical point of view. But Director Elliott?
Thank you. So the grant in kind for Ice Time doesn't just include this event, whereas the application just includes this event. The grant in kind for Ice Time for the skating club is half of their ice time for all their practices and things throughout the year, and it adds up. I don't remember exactly, but it was a couple $1,000. It was what she said during her delegation, because I asked that question. We could go back and look if we wanted to know what she said, but so while the application focuses on this one event, the grant in kind that the city provides is for overall use of it throughout the year. So I don't think that just the information in the application speaks to that very well.
Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing no hands up, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. Carried. Power River Skating will get their full request. So now we have three more. So I would suggest maybe it'd be most efficient to deal with the Orca bus one, since that's from general, and but I'll leave it open to the committee to make another motion. We have three more, I believe, on the table. And if we were to do if anyone wants to return to the Orca bus one, the motion is to take it off the table. Corporate Officer?
Thank you, Chair. I think you can just take from the table when the other pending business is dealt with. So if the committee feels like discussion has completed, just resume discussion on the Orca bus.
Okay, so maybe one would pull that one off because that's sort of separate from the other two, and the other two we might need a bit more. Director Elliott?
I wanted to know how the directors felt about the Cassette Film Society. There seems to be less than half of their requests being fulfilled here, and I wondered if we support that, or if we might like to change that distribution slightly. I don't feel like we're treating the Cassette Film Society fairly necessarily, but we have limited funds, and I wouldn't mind, before bringing that off the table, letting the directors weigh in on whether that was something we were interested in doing or not.
Thank you. I guess it's open. There's no motion on the table right now, so if Director would like to propose something for any one of the three remaining ones, Hospice Film, Quebec Cathette Film, or the Orca bus. I'm not seeing anything. We're going to have to do something.
Yes. So if hearing nothing, we could pull the Orca bus and table it again. I just wanted to ask a question.
Yeah. Okay. So why don't we? So the Orca bus one is back on the table. So it's been moved and seconded at the last meeting, and we've had some discussion on it. So why don't we return to that? So in other words, the motion on the table now is to fund the Orca bus, Powell River Child, Youth, and Family Services at $11,530 from general grants and aid, and that would, as far as I understand, will completely empty that fund. So that's all we can do. I see a nod from Ms. Lilly. So, is there any discussion on that item on the Orca bus? Director Gisborne?
Yeah, I want to support the Orca bus. Problem we have, though, is that if this motion passes, then general grants and aid gets completely depleted, and then it's up to the electoral areas to make up the difference for any other grant application. This is a concern I've raised in the past, that when we pass our budget, we don't know how much money is going to be asked from us, and we run into this problem every year. And I get very frustrated because every year we end up using up everything from general grants and aid for things that have regional benefits, but then everything that's left over gets shouldered onto the electoral areas. And I know there's not much we can do about it today, but we changed our grant application process, and every year we run into this issue. I guess the question I have, because I found that other services, if they go over budget, we can take it from next year's requisition. Would it be possible to allocate more funds from something like general grant and aid than what's currently budgeted for, but then we would have to increase the allocation from next year's? Is that a possibility?
Ms. Greenan?
Thank you, Chair. Through the chair, no, the board can't purposely overspend. You know, you could, if you have to overspend, if it's an emergency or it's, you know, something happens that you have to overspend, then you have to take that from the next year's funding. But the board can't purposely budget a deficit, and this would be purposely budgeting a deficit.
Thank you very much. That really helps clarify the situation that we're in. I want to give the Orca bus everything that they're asking for, but I'm also very concerned about the Film Society and these other applications, which in their applications are saying that they benefit the region. But every year when we pass our budget, we don't allocate enough funds into general grant and aid. And in the end, it's coming out of the electoral areas. I'm just expressing that if we pass this motion, don't be surprised if I don't necessarily support the other motions, because they're going to be coming out of electoral area funds. Thank you, Chair.
Yeah, thank you. Is there any other discussion on this item? Seeing no hands up, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Oh, Director McCormick,
I
sorry.
just wanted to make sure, is it the Orca bus that we're voting on now?
Yes, the motion right now is to fund 11,530 from general grants and aid for the Orca bus.
Thank you.
Okay, so I'll go back to Director Brander.
Thanks, Chair. I haven't really, I've been a little bit rushed here, but I'm just kicking around an idea that could we have the three remaining? So we've got the Film Society, the Four Tides Society, and the Orca bus. Could we all have them be given an equal percentage of what they're asking for? So if you add the three requests up and then add up the three recommended and divide it by the three requested, you get a percentage. And you can multiply that percentage by the requested. I'm not being clear, but basically just to take whatever money we have left over from the general grants and aid and split it up equally, I guess.
Right. So right now in the agenda, and I see Ms. Lily's busy crunching. It's a little tricky because the hospice is coming from A to E. The film is coming from A to D.
Yeah, it's tricky. I understand, and I just wanted to put the idea out there before we actually called the vote, I guess.
And there is, you know, other than the adjustment from the wild ocean whale, declining that provides some additional funds in A to C. Area D is now basically more or less depleted, other than what's in the recommendations, and so that would give some opportunity to increase it from those pots of money to bring up the cathette film and or the hospice. So you'd like to know, is the question, you'd like to know what would be a percent reduction on all three of those that would work, that would be the same percent reduction.
Right. So then we could take some of the general grants and aid and spread it out to the Four Tides and cathette. So we'll be reducing our grant to the Orca bus and increasing Four Tides and cathette.
And was the question to leave the recommended amounts from the electoral area funds for the hospice and the film the same, but just shifting some general grants and aid down?
Yeah, I
into
guess
those?
because we're kind of constrained by the area grants and aid, aren't we? Because some areas don't have any money left over in there.
Yeah, so does that question make sense, Ms. Lillies? Is that
Yeah, I apologize for the jumbled question at the light.
well, it's just mathematically a little challenging, so I see you're smiling, but Ms. Lillies, is that even possible to do on the fly like this?
Yes, thank you through the chair. I could distribute, like right now, we've got basically, yeah, D and E don't have anything left. B is down to $451. A and C have some, quite a bit available. It's a bit harder to use though because of the distribution. But I could.
Chair?
Yeah, I see.
Sorry.
Corporate officer?
I was just going to ask if we could have a 5-minute recess just to do the math and come back.
Yes, why don't we do that? Let's take a 5-minute break, and so we don't require Ms. Lillies to. And maybe I'll.
Thank you.
Okay. Thanks. So we'll come back. We'll reconvene in 5 minutes.
Yeah, recording.
Recording in progress.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. We're back in session.
Thank you. And thank you to staff for figuring out this non-trivial math problem. Corporate Officer?
Staff would like to suggest that we table this item and move on to the other items of business while they figure out the math on this. Would that be?
Okay, would someone like to table this item 8.5? Director Branders or seconder? Director Elliott, is there discussion on this tabling? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed, none, carried. So, okay, so we're on to 8.6, which is, let me just scroll down. Canada Summer Jobs Grant 2025. Director Elliott?
I'll just move the motion in the package.
Seconded.
Okay, second, is there a discussion on that? Director Lennox?
Lennox?
Lennox, you
Chair.
gotta, whatever's rolls
Yeah,
off the tongue.
yeah, sorry, Chair. I was
Just cut it. Yeah,
being silly. Just of note, I was a beneficiary of that grant way back when, working at Craig Road Park, and it's like foundational for people. And students and those folks benefit greatly. So I think it's great for us to try to help that out. Thanks.
Perfect. Thank you for that. Is there anyone else? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? None opposed, that carries. Okay, 8.7 is the fees and charges bylaw updates, which is a three-part item. Director Gisborne?
So moved.
So moved. Is there a seconder? Director Lennox? Is there any discussion on that? Director Gisborne?
Yes, one of the major changes that you'll see in this is on page 8 of 13, which is processing agricultural land reserve exclusion applications. This item came up at the Agricultural Advisory Committee. We have recently gone through the process of the housing proposal on Texada Island to have land removed from the ALR for the purposes of housing. And the information that came back was there is a significant cost to staff time, and I'm fully in support of this motion to update our fees to more accurately reflect the costs that this does put on our staff to process all this application. And other than that, good work, staff. Keep up the good job. It is a lot of work to handle all this paperwork. And that's it. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you. Is there any other discussion on this? I'll Director McCormick.
Thank you, Chair. I just want to clarify that the fee for the airport lease per square foot has been increased to 9 cents per square foot from 8 cents. And when I read the report, it reads like it is an increase of 9 cents, but in fact, it's an increase to 9 cents. So I just want to make sure that that's clear, and perhaps I could get a comment from staff just confirming that that's the fact.
Yeah, I see, is that Mr. Devereaux on the screen there?
Yes, Chair. The airport lease fees have been removed from this bylaw completely, right? So because they have their own lease agreements, they're not covered into this bylaw. And the fees are determined in their leases. I'd have to check. I can't remember off the top of my head if it's a 9 cent increase or an increase to 9 cents, but I can get that to Director McCormick.
Director McCormick?
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it is increased to 9 cents. And yes, I understand now it's not in the bylaw. So thank you for that clarification. Good.
Thank you. And I'll just add my comment. I agree with the need to have a fee for the agricultural advisory, the applications to remove land from ALR. I think take staff time, and the AAC Agriculture Advisory Committee made a good recommendation, and I think we need to recover fees from that. It's not fair to others to have to shoulder that. So I think staff have done a really good job in trying to keep our fees down, but we need to charge for the services. Okay, seeing no other hands up, I will then call a question on this item. All those in favor? None opposed. That one carries. Okay, so I guess corporate officer, are we okay to go back to the 8.5? Because the only thing left is in camera now.
New business, all right?
Go check.
You just share the screen.
Hi, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Yes,
Oh,
we're ready to come back now.
Ready to go. Okay, yeah, the new business, Director Elliott, the new business was taken out. So we have question period, which we'll deal with 8.5 first, and then go to question period. So Ms. Greenan.
Thank you, Chair. If I could share my screen, I'll just show you what we managed to come up with.
Were you able to?
Yes, so now you should be seeing my screen with a lot of numbers.
Mhm.
So we go down to the this is intake 2. You can see my cursor there. And so these are the three in white that we need to deal with. And so what we've done is if we allocate, it works out to 72%, let's see, just over 72%. If we give them each 72%, 72.4%, then that basically leaves $19.79 in the general grants and aid. And then it leaves, we still have, there's 0 in area D and 0 in area E. So that way they each get 72.4% of the pot that's available.
Great.
So that would
Thank you.
mean, yeah, so for Paul River Child, Youth and Family Services, Orca Bus would be $8,905.20. Fort Hides Hospice Society, $47.06. Cut That Film Society, $14.48.
Okay, that's very good. Thank you, Ms. Green, and thank you all staff who worked on that kind of non-trivial adjustment to make it work. Hopefully, I'm hoping this satisfies the concerns around the table. So we have on our table a motion as in the package, and if we want to do something like this, we would amend it. So Director Elliott.
My thought was if we could gain general consensus that we wanted to move forward with the new numbers, then we could amend the motion as per what was in that. But I don't know if we want to go forward amending it if we haven't got general agreement that that's how we want to move forward. So I thought maybe just a canvas about whether we kind of agree with the new numbers and want to move forward with that or not.
Okay, so very briefly, maybe I'll ask, maybe to put it the negative. If we've had a lot of discussion on this, is there anyone who doesn't like this adjustment that was proposed and that moves things around? Director McCormick?
Yeah, thank you. I prefer giving the full amount or the amount that was proposed in the package to Orca Bus because I believe they do really important, tangible work that is appreciated by everyone, certainly with young kids. So I think their work is really more, I can't say more important because everyone's work is important, but I would like to see the full amount go forward to Orca Bus that was planned in the original agenda. So I'm not in favor of the reduced amount.
Okay, thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in this kind of round table? Seeing, Director Gisborne.
Yeah, the concern I raised was there's only so much money to go around from general grant and aid, and that this proposal still uses up all that money from general grant and aid, and to make up a lot of the difference, it's still coming out of the electoral areas. So whether, Youth and Family Services, Hospice, and Film Society are getting, allocations from general grant and aid, and then they're having other portions of their own being made up from the electoral or grant and aid. The tax impact on the electoral areas is still very similar, and it doesn't address my concern that things that benefit the region should come out of general grant and aid. And maybe that's something that we should be discussing when we go to adopt our next financial plan, to put sufficient funds into general grant and aid so that we stop having to make up the difference from the electoral areas, because we find ourselves in this situation every year. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Director Brander.
I was just gonna say, I like the numbers here because it makes everything a little bit more equitable instead of one organization getting almost everything they want. Everybody's getting 3/4 of what they want, and it lends aid to a few different demographics. You've got the hospice group, you've got the youth that are being looked after by the Orca bus, and you have the film society, which is everybody can take advantage of that. So I like the fairness of it.
So, Director Elliott.
So I would move amendment of the Orca bus motion to reflect the new Orca bus numbers in the numbers put together by staff. And if we get a seconder, we can move forward on that.
Seconder, Director Southcott, thank you. So maybe staff can just clarify the numbers. That was $8,905. I didn't get the pennies,
Yes.
but
Yes,
okay.
thank you, Chair. It was $8,905.20.
Okay, so there's an amendment on the table to change 11,530 to 8,905. Is there any discussion on that amendment? Seeing none, I will call the question on the amendment. All those in favor? Opposed? One opposed, Director McCormick. So it carries. So now we have on the table before us the motion to provide 8,905 from general grants and aid to the Orca bus. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed. That carries. Okay, very good. So now we have two more. So would someone like to make a motion related to the hospice, Director Elliott?
I would move.
That was an amendment. Have we done the?
Oh, we did the main. Yeah, we did both. Yes, thank you,
Back to the
CEO.
main motion, yeah.
Perhaps before can we have the numbers, Linda? And
If you could write them, then we can move them.
what I'm thinking is that if you share them, I'll be able to read out the motion that I think is desired for hospice.
I believe it's as in the agenda, corporate officer, with an additional $1,992 from general grant and aid.
Well, except we have to move them from the various funds as well.
No, I think that they've done it already.
Yeah, so it's as in the agenda. Is that correct, Ms. Greenan? It's as in the agenda plus 1992 from general.
That's correct.
Yeah.
That's correct, Chair.
So that would be the motion if
That
someone...
would be, with the addition of that, the committee recommended to the board that the board approve a grant of $1,992 to the Four Tides Hospice Society for general operating costs from the general grant and aid service.
I would move that.
Right. Plus the other items in the
other 5.
Plus the other 5. So is that what you're moving, Director Elliott?
Yes, please.
Okay, and I'm gonna
all the motions are attached to 4 times in the agenda, plus the one the corporate officer has just read out.
perfect. Just so we're clear, seconder, Director Gisborne, you're seconding that? Okay, so discussion on that, Director Gisborne?
We actually have essentially a motion before us to allocate funding to Four Tides Hospice Society from general grant and aid, Area A, from Area B, from Area C, Area D. So it's essentially 6 motions because there'd be a whole bunch of ands in there. Is that correct?
It's, but yeah, one joint motion with a bunch of ands, yes.
I'd like to split the motion and split general grant and aid portion from the rest of the electoral area grant and aid portion of the motion.
Okay. So we have a motion before us, so we can vote on I guess it doesn't matter which one we do first. I think the general comes after. So why don't we consider on right now the motion, the A to E portion of it, which is as in the agenda. So the part that's in the agenda. So is there any discussion on that part of it, Director Gisborne?
Yep. So we've reduced the funding to the Orca bus, so that way we could provide funding from the general grant and aid to the other applicants, such as Four Tides and Cathet Film Society, and that comes out of general grant and aid, which comes from everyone. I was happy to vote in favor of that motion because it's a regional benefit. And yes, that makes the Orca bus get even less money than they're asking for. Their original request was $12,300. Now we just passed a motion for $8,905. I'm fine with that, but that means that the other applicants should also be treated the same from our general grants. So I'm very happy to support from the general grant and aid, but I'm not willing to support the motion coming from the electoral areas towards the Four Tides Hospice Society or the Cathette Film Society. I think those funds should be coming out of the general grant and aid. I believe that's why we reduced the request from the Orca bus, so that there would be still some of those funds to fund the other two applicants. But really, if we pass this motion, then all we're really doing is making the Orca bus suffer needlessly. So I'm opposed to the grant coming from areas A, B, C, D, and E. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Director Elliott.
Thank you. Once again, the city has provided considerable funding to all of the Orca bus, the Four Tides, and the Film Society for capital projects through the community forests, which are city funds that we contribute to. And if we always only do triennial grants and aids, then the projects we fund separately over at the city are getting less credit than they deserve. So I take exception to with always wanting to make everything general grants and aid, because it treats the city's contributions as which are done granted separately under a different government, but they're still being contributed to, and through that funds ability on capital projects. And so it would be nice if we could not always nickel and dime out of the general grant. We can't put as much into general grants and aid because the bulk of our funding comes from grants through the city, community forest, and other avenues. So that needs some recognition here at this board in order for us to treat everybody equitably.
Now just add myself onto the speaking list and then see Director Gisborne. I think the package together of the Orca bus, the hospice, and the cassette film will give each applicant about a bit over 72% of their total with the package we're doing. So if we were to not support the electoral area contribution, then the Hospice Society would be receiving significantly less than 72%. So that would not be an equitable reduction. That would be really impacting, we'd be impacting the Orca bus and impacting the hospice without trying to find a rebalancing. I'm happy to, and that contribution from general grants and aid, Area E contributes to that too, even if we probably don't benefit that much from the hospice, but the hospice does a really great job, important service, and I'm happy to contribute, and I'm happy to contribute a little bit from Area E. I think the important thing is that we provide these groups some support, and we can have discussions later about how we find out the appropriate amounts to put in grants. But at the end of the day, for the taxpayer, we need to decide at budget time how much we allocate in total, and then we do the hard job of dividing it up. We can't come up with the right amount of money that everyone wants. We have to make hard decisions to decide when we reduce, when we decline, and when we support. And we're trying to do the best with what's available. And I think this is a good, fair, balanced package, and I fully support it. Director Gisborne.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with much of what has been said, and I know that we are getting very off topic on what the motion is before the Assembly. When it comes to the contribution from, say, the municipality of Powell River or community forests, that's a lot of information that we don't have at this table. Yes, community forest does provide a great deal of benefit to the community, but we at this table don't get that information. We don't know what they're contributing to. Also, my understanding is community forest doesn't come out of general taxation over at the city. Area grant and aid does. And to Director Fall or Chair Fall's point of, we have to kind of determine what these limits are before we get the ask. And that's a challenging job. We said, okay, we will allocate, $60,000 or something like that from a general grant and aid, or $90,000. The problem that we're running into is that the grant intake application occurs after we pass our budget. Not all regional districts do that. In fact, most actually have the grant intake before you pass the budget, so you can go, okay, we're getting a request for $120,000.
Order, Chair.
Yes, Director Brander, what's your point of order?
Thank you, Chair. Director Gisborne did allude to it that we have gone off topic here, and I just want to draw attention to that.
Okay, thank you. Well taken. Director Gisborne, can we, and I helped contribute to that, for that I apologize. Could we focus back on the motion on the table, which is the contribution from areas A to E? So carry on, Director Gisborne.
Absolutely. And I'm only responding to the comments made by the two other directors that were also out of order. So I'm getting called point of order on my response. But I don't want to upset the apple cart, so I'll just leave it at that.
Thank you. And I apologize for my comments, which were off topic. So is there any further debate on this motion, which is for our Director McCormick?
Thank you. And I do support the motion for this year, but I do think that Director Gisborne raises a valid point that we need to do a better job for next year regarding anticipating what we're going to need in general grant and aid and putting more money into that. So I think that's important for future years, but for right now, I'm going to support the recommendation. Thanks.
Thank you. Is there any further debate on this motion? Seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? One opposed. Director Gisborne, it passes. So now we have our second motion, which is the second part of the motion split. So this is for the general grant, the general contribution from general grant and aid. So $1,992 from general grant and aid for the Hospice Society. So is there any discussion on that part of the motion? Seeing none, then I will call the question. All those in favor? None opposed. That carries. Okay, one more to go, which is cassette film. Director Elliott?
I would move the cassette film motion 3, which is 1, 2, 3 sections with the addition of this change in the grant and aid one. What was that change?
Corporate officer?
4 sections and then a contribution of
613.
From 117 to something else.
Yeah, it's for 1600. So it's as in the agenda plus 613 from general grant and aid, I believe. Is that correct, Ms. Greenan?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's correct.
So is that the motion? So has it been seconded?
So was that the one? Sorry, just to be clear, in the agenda there was a grant and aid section for 117.96, and then we add an extra 6, or was that the total amount?
So is that as in the agenda, which and plus 600. So as in the agenda plus 613 from general grants and aid, which brings the total to $1,448. If I wrote down my numbers down correctly, is that correct, Ms. Green?
Yeah. So I'm
Yes,
wondering if that's the total grant and aid amount, or if the total grant and aid amount for this motion is 117.96 plus 6 something.
Ms. Greenan?
Thank you, Chair. Maybe I'll just share the screen. It might be easier to see. It's so
Oh, sorry, I had the wrong one.
okay, so we're looking at 613 from general and then 394.
Okay,
yeah.
Correct. Sorry, I got confused for a second.
Okay.
No
Thank you
worries.
so much for your
Thanks.
patience.
So clear. So it's A, B, C, D, and then another 613 that adds up to 1,448.
Absolutely correct. Thank you. That's my motion.
Okay, is there a seconder for that motion? Director Gisborne, is there discussion on this? Director Gisborne.
I'd like the item split, just like last time.
Okay, so we're on the A to D piece of it. Is there any discussion on the A to D portion of that?
Already said
it. Seeing none, we've already talked about it. So I'll call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? One opposed, Director Gisborne. Thank you. Carries. And then the general grant and aid piece for 613. Is there any discussion on that? Seeing none, I will call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? None opposed? Carried. Thank you. We're through that. So we're on to question period. Is there anyone in the audience, or Mr. Galinsky, are you there for questions? I don't hear anyone. Oh, CAO? Corporate officer?
Thank you, Chair Fall. Councillor Isaacson is here and would like to ask a question.
Oh, okay. Councillor Isaacson?
Thank you, Chair. It's regarding item 8.3, which was related to um, the future issuance of long-term borrowing for the 6.4 million in the Resource Recovery Center. And so if my memory is correct, because it was from the meeting last week, the Finance Committee adopted a motion directing staff to secure long-term borrowing debt, which will allow repayment of the short-term borrowing, and that takes place in fall 2025. There was a bit of discussion of potentially taking advantage of lower interest rates as interest rates drops. But so my question is related to the fact that this is not new borrowing, it's a shift in existing borrowing, and there's already payments being made. I believe I heard that we're currently only making interest payments on the short-term borrowing. So I'm in making that decision to shift it to fall of 2024. I'm wondering if the board is aware of what the costs of the short-term borrowing are for that extra 6-month period from moving it from spring of 2025 to fall of 2025. I'm hoping my question makes sense, and perhaps Ms. Greenan or another staff member can help me understand that.
Thank you. I believe it makes sense. Ms. Greenan, maybe is that hopefully clear? Were you able to answer that, or is that something you can do on the fly?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so I think it's a floating interest rate, and I think we're at 5.79% right now. And whoops. So so the interest for that 6-month period is $185,280. And actually, what I was going to recommend is generally, because we would have borrowed, what I was going to recommend during the budgeting process for 2025 is generally we would do the borrowing in the spring, and then we would have just an interest payment in the fall. But we did have it in the budget to make a principal payment. So what I was going to recommend is that we actually make that, we don't borrow that extra principal, like make that principal payment before we borrow the balance of the funding. And then that will reduce the borrowing a little bit, because we don't have to borrow the whole 6.4 million. It's always up to 6.4 million is what's approved in that in the bylaw.
Thank you. Does that answer your question?
Yep, thank you for that clarity.
Hello, Chair Galinsky from the Peak here.
Mr. Galinsky?
How are you today, sir?
I'm very good. How are you?
Well, thank you. My question was also with regard to item 8.3 from last week, the security issuing bylaw, and the recommendation to the board. Manager of Financial Services explained it very well. My question is probably to Ms. Greenan as well. It seems to me that this is a second security issuing bylaw that has been issued or is going to be issued for the Resource Recovery Center. Am I correct in this?
Ms. Greenan?
Thank you, Chair. Through the Chair. Yes, we have already done one security issuing bylaw for 5.5 million, and then this is the second one for 6.4 million.
I'm wondering, Chair, what the term of the first one was.
Ms. Greenan?
The first one was we borrowed over 30 years.
I think
we got an interest rate of 4.79%, if I recall correctly.
Perfect. I thank the manager for that. So after this security issuing bylaw is done in 2025, my presumption is all that remains is the $2.5 million that may be settled through community works or from long-term borrowing as well.
Yes, through the Chair. That's correct. Yes.
Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask questions, Chair.
You're most welcome. Okay, moving on, we have an in-camera session. Would someone like to read the motion? Director Gisborne.
I'm back in time. I move that the committee move in camera that the meeting be closed to the public on the grounds that the subject matter to be considered relates to matters covered by the community charter under section 91C, labor relations or other employee relations, and in the consideration of whether a committee meeting should be closed under provision of this subsection or subsection 2.
Okay, thank you. Is there a seconder? Director Lennox, a discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? None opposed? We are going in camera. Carries.
Question.
Fix my washing machine.
Recording in progress.
Thank you, Chair. We're back.
Okay, so we are back in the open session of the November 12th continuation of the November 6th Finance Committee meeting, and we are adjourned.